You survived the Miami weekend, nailed the speech, and maxed out your credit card in the name of friendship. Now you've got one hangover, 4 pastel dresses, and 0 reasons to wear them again. Sell them on Depop. Just snap a few photos, and we'll take care of the rest. And you at least get some of your dignity, money back. Someone on Depop wants what you've got. Start selling now. Depop, where taste recognizes taste.
Send Help is now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
We're somewhere in the Gulf of Thailand.
Getting us out of here should be your focus. I'm your boss. You work for me.
We're not in the office anymore.
It's bold, relentless, and endlessly rewatchable. Discover why critics give it 93% on Rotten Tomatoes.
You're so fired.
Oh, am I? No help is coming.
Send Help, rated R, now streaming on Hulu and Hulu on Disney+.
This episode of The Infamous Ones addresses sensitive and distressing topics, including the sexual assault of minors. I want to emphasize that the content may be triggering for some listeners. The intention is to raise awareness and foster discussion around these serious issues. If you or someone you know is affected by these topics, I encourage you to seek support from a qualified professional or helpline. Listener discretion is advised. The good book says, "We live for Christ, therefore we die for Christ." Well, baby, I need to know what good book you reading, because I don't see anything Christ-like about you.
You are now listening to The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast hosted by Kay on Spotify. A podcast aimed to uncover and share the stories behind heinous and insane acts that have been overlooked or overshadowed by mainstream media, getting justice for the voices that can't speak.
What's up, y'all? It's your girl Kay, and I am the host of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast. A podcast designed to focus on crimes committed in the Black community that you don't hear about in mainstream media, giving a voice to those victims that have otherwise been silenced. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast with me, Kay, the Texas girl in a Georgia world, baby. Ladies, how y'all feel? Fellas, y'all all right? It is Monday, January 12th, 2026, and yes, the show is a day late, but guess what? It's for good reason. Why? Because The Infamous Ones is officially monetized, baby. What's up? That's right, your girl is officially monetized. Ew, clock it. I am so happy. I am so excited. When I got the news from Spotify, I was like, oh my God. Like, I purposely withheld the episode. I know, but I wanted to go ahead and do the episode with the ads and everything. So that way you guys could enjoy the first official monetized episode of The Infamous Ones. So don't be mad. Don't be fussing me out because y'all got it a day late. Y'all will be okay. Okay. But on top of that, I am feeling the anticipation that is approaching for this weekend. The live show is almost here. I am so excited. I hope y'all are. It's going to be such a dope event, y'all. We got Tipsy Sips in the building with the great drinks. There's going to be pictures, and the case is freaking bananas. Like, the research that I was doing on it, insane. This is one of them cases where it will not be streamed on any, audio service. Like, you have to be there in order to hear the episode. So if you ain't get your tickets by now, I'm sorry, because I told y'all December 31st that registration was closing. So y'all had weeks and weeks and weeks to get your ticket, and you didn't. If you didn't get it, sorry. If you did, though, make sure that if you have not purchased your drink package yet, you do it now, because you're not going to be able to do it the day of. Well, somewhat. Drink packages are going to be available up until 6 p.m. They're available up until 30 minutes before the doors open. The drink packages are $20 plus tax, so $21.99, and you get 4 drinks with it. You'll be given a wristband and all of that, but one of the drinks is gonna be the murderous mimosa, and it is so yummy. And shout out to my boy Tevin, by the way, at Tipsy Sips. He's doing his thing. But yes, y'all, your girl is definitely ready for some fun. Oh, and by the way, y'all, this is the last episode of season 3. What? We are about to be on season 4 next week. Can you believe it? I am so proud of me and I am so grateful for you mobbers. It took 3 seasons, but we are officially monetized. Listen, y'all, I am fighting each week to get my spot back, in that top 3. I'm telling myself, put yourself first, put infamous ones first. I'm sounding like Cookie Lion. I gotta put myself first, Lucius. I gotta put myself first. But y'all know how I am. Y'all know I'm all about the metrics. Now, I will say I was propositioned to have a co-host, but I honestly, I don't know. Like I'm thinking about it. I mean, like, I've kind of been doing my own thing and I've been doing it since the show's inception, 2 years ago. I gotta seriously think about that one. Like, I don't mind the collabs. I love doing the collabs, but to have like a permanent co-host, I just feel like I like doing things by myself. I don't wanna keep changing things with the show. I like switching up stuff here and there, but, I wanna keep it at its core, at what it's supposed to be. Anyways, y'all, okay, so what y'all sipping on? This week, I am sipping on some sangria. It's something a little cheap. It's that Capriccio white sangria. Oh, but trust and believe, honey, it is that good stuff, okay? And I got my popcorn and I got some nerd clusters. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm ready to get into this episode. So, let's get into it. Baby, it's wine and true crime time. Okay. Hop on in and buckle up, baby, because tonight we taking a trip back to 2004 when Usher had the club screaming, yeah. Sierra had us ladies minding our goodies. Jamie Foxx killed the box office with Ray. Yeah, I'm gonna make it do what it do, baby. And The Grudge had all of us trying to make sure nothing was crawling out of our TV screens, amen? And in Fresno, California, the Vampire King rocked the entire town. Now, again, this episode contains the sexual assault against minor children, so listener discretion is advised. Y'all ready? Y'all know what time it is. Let's get it. This week's case involves Sabrina Wesson, victim, Elizabeth Wesson, but for the purpose of this week's episode, she's going to be called by her nickname B, surviving victim, Elizabeth, aka Lise Wesson, victim, Illabelle Wesson, victim, Aviv Wesson, victim, Ruby Sanchez, surviving victim, Rosie Solorio, surviving victim, Dorian Wesson, surviving victim, Jonathan Wesson, victim, Kiani Wesson, surviving victim, Ethan Wesson, victim, Marsha Wesson, victim, Jiva Wesson, victim, Sadana Wesson, victim, and the infamous murderer of the week, Marcus Wesson, aka the Vampire King of Fresno. Marcus DeLon Wesson was born August 22nd, 1946, to Benjamin and Carrie Wesson in Kansas City, Missouri. He was the oldest of 4 children now. I couldn't get all of the siblings' names, but I know he has a younger sister by the name of Cheryl Penton. And let's just say from jump, he had some messed up stuff going on. The boy grew up in toxicity. Like his mother was a 7-day Adventist, so he was raised in the church, which isn't bad, but she was a very religious type of individual. And with 7-day Adventists, they believe that worship should be done on the Sabbath, which is true. However, for them, the Sabbath is on a Saturday instead of on a Sunday. And, we've all been taught that the Lord's Day is on Sunday, but for them, they believe that they should worship pretty much all day on Saturday. They stick to the Bible solely as their teaching method, and that's how his mother was. Like, she was always preaching about the second coming, always preaching about Jesus returning. They don't drink, they don't smoke, they don't believe that, they believe that sinful humans can be saved, but they're very firm believers against abortions and against same sex marriages. Hmm. Considering that those are sins, it kind of makes me wonder, do they believe that they can be saved, seeing as how they believe that sinful humans can be saved? I don't know. I also found out that they don't believe in eternal hell either. Like, they don't believe in the whole, like, fire and brimstone and lake of fire and eternal damnation. They feel like God doesn't condemn his people. And even though they believe in the Bible, they believe in the visions and the prophecies of Ellen White. Now, I did a little bit of research on her, and Ellen White, she was a visionist, I guess you could call her. Like, she died in the early 1900s, but she had like 2,000 visions about the Bible and healthy diets and all of that, you know, that naturally incorporates what she believed in. So, needless to say, like I said, the boy was dealing with some toxicity, and he dealt with a lot as far as getting teachings from his mother. And then he also had to deal with his father. Now, his father was basically an alcoholic drunk that abused the crap out of his kids and was cheating on his mama left and right with men. Oh, yeah, daddy was a dirty dick nigga that quoted the Bible but couldn't live the Bible. Amen. He was smashing one of Marcus's cousins, and Carrie, she was just oblivious to everything. Like, I honestly don't think that she even really wanted to acknowledge it. Like, I think she knew what was going on, but just refused to acknowledge it. And so that's why I said that Marcus had it bad from jump. Now, don't get it twisted. It ain't excusing any of this. It's just kind of setting the tone, I guess you could say. But just imagine growing up in a household where you're being forced to study the Bible all day long and everything. And then at the same time, your father is abusing you and treating your entire family like trash. Marcus dealt with it as much as he could, but once he was old enough to get out, he did. He didn't even finish high school. Like, he dropped out and enlisted in the US Army, where he worked from 1966 to 1968 as an ambulance driver. And I'm gonna tell y'all now, this is probably the only solid job this man has had, okay? He got to really experience the war at its fullest because he was deployed to Vietnam. So he returns home after being discharged, and he's got like a few countless jobs, nothing that really stands out, just stuff to make a little bit of money here and there. But when he returned home, he met a Hispanic woman that was much older than him by the name of Rosemary Solario. Now, Rosemary was quite a piece of work. When he met her, Shawty Girl had 8 children. Yeah, 8 kids. But that was perfect for him. He didn't mind having to be around 8 kids because he knew she needed the help. A single woman in the 90s with that many kids, she would do just about anything to make him happy if that meant keeping him around. So he moves in with her and they kicking it, they fucking around, whatever you want to call it, and she ends up becoming pregnant with his oldest son, Dorian. And Dorian was born in 1971, and Marcus was happy because he was a first-time father. Sounds perfect, right? Oh, but wait. Now, Marcus was never really involved with the Seven-Day Adventists like his mother was the older that he became. He kind of had his own beliefs about religion as time went on. And so he started writing his own Bible. He felt like he couldn't get with the whole 7-day thing, and he wanted his own family to have their own beliefs. And one of his beliefs was that he could have sex with whomever he wanted. And he wanted Rosemary's 8-year-old daughter, Elizabeth. Now, I'm going to tell y'all now, oh, I'm about to pop my ish about this sicko throughout the entire episode. Like, I'm going to save most of it for fair or foul, but just know that it's coming when it comes to this little Harry and the Henderson looking ass fool, okay? So I gave y'all the disclaimer, all right? Now, there's going to be a couple of times in this episode where I tell y'all that if it gets to be too much to skip ahead a couple of seconds just because it is graphic, and this is going to be one of them times. Now, at 8 years old, Marcus was telling Elizabeth that she was his and that God made her for him. He told her that she would be his wife, and he began grooming her both mentally and sexually. Now, old girl had now 9 kids, so I'm almost certain that she had other female children that he was probably sexually assaulting as well, but he took a special liking to Elizabeth. Rosemary did absolutely nothing about it. She consented to their union with her trifling behind. And at just 14 years old, Elizabeth becomes pregnant with the first of many children that she had by Marcus. And I do mean many. Like Marcus, old nasty behind, is 34 years old when he marries Elizabeth, who is only 14 at the time. He gave her the nickname B. So, like I said, for the sake of this episode, because there's later going to be an Elizabeth Jr., we're going to call her B. Okay. Now, she's 20 years his junior, and he nor her mother saw anything wrong with what he was doing. He knew he was fucking on an 8-year-old girl all the way till she turned 14 and said, "All right, now it's time for me to marry you. Now it's time for you to bear my children." And I'm trying so hard to wait for fair or foul, y'all. I really am. They ain't making this easy at all. Ooh, Jesus, Earl Christ, they ain't making this easy. But they're married, and B continuously gets pregnant. She's birthing their babies one after the other, after the other. Sabrina, Kiani, Serafino, Elizabeth Jr., Sidonia, and a few others. She birthed 11 children for this man. Okay? Now, she ended up losing one of the children, but she birthed 11 children. Now, it was rumored that he had 18 children, but I only counted 15 in my research. But we've only scratched the surface with this case, y'all. Okay. This is the most twisted maze of incest that I have ever seen. So, B is birthing all of these babies for Marcus until she can no longer have kids. At which point, he decides that he's going to set his eyes on the children of his child. So as Sabrina and Kiani, Ruby, Serafina, they're getting older, and he's creating more children. Let that sink in, y'all. He did this with his own daughters. This sick, sadistic, inbred bastard. Now, B did have a sister that was younger than her that he was, having to help out because she was really having some bad drug problems, and she herself had children. She knew she couldn't care for her children like she wanted to do, so she left them with Marcus and the women to raise them while she got herself together. Yeah, because that's going to work out well for you. Leave your kids with a pedophile. Good job. Whew. Anyway, so the entire time, Marcus never works. He relies on welfare, and he made the children that were old enough to go work to go out and get jobs. So when the kids hit legal age, some of them did move out, but many of them worked and gave Marcus their paychecks. Marcus was very resourceful. Like, they didn't have a definitive address to live, so he would move them anywhere, anywhere he saw fit. The family lived in an army tent in the mountains with no running water or bathrooms. When they weren't there, Marcus had gotten like this old rotted boat that they lived on, still no running water or working toilets. And every day, the women would row Marcus to shore as if he was Captain Jack Sparrow in the Pirates of the Caribbean. He would do what he could, I guess, to feed his family, like digging through the dumpsters near the McDonald's for hamburgers or, whatever else was available. But then this man had the audacity to tell them that they were going to be vegan and that they could only eat specific foods, but you can't provide that for them. So his family is literally starving. For Marcus, he and his family were living the good life in his head anyway. He was making do with what he had and with what his kids had too, of course, because he had them out there working for him. Until he messed up and got caught for not reporting his boat that he was living in as an asset. So he gets hemmed up on some charges of welfare fraud, and he goes to prison in 1989. But he has no worries because his family is still loyal to him. They're still taking care of him, put money on his books, all of that, which is fucking crazy to me. So eventually he gets out of prison, and the family goes right back to living like they used to. Marcus had complete and total control over these women. The girl children, they couldn't speak with the boy children or be anywhere near them for that matter. And Marcus didn't want them to have any, sexual ideas, so he kept them separated. He kept the gender separated. The girls, the children were not allowed to speak to their mother at all after birth. And don't think because he had babies that he was loving and sweet. Like that, he was not. Okay. B talked about how many times that the babies would cry. And I'm talking about as young as 1 month old, and Marcus would take a switch or a belt to their legs because they were crying. 1 month old babies who have no control over their emotions or feelings, who are probably just hungry or wet or tired, he would whoop their legs until they were hoarse from screaming and their legs were red. And when B would try to stand up against Marcus, he would choke her out until she blacked out. He would beat her. He made sure that they feared him. They had no sense of freedom. Most kids would go to school, play with, other kids their age or something that resembled a normal childhood. But this was far from normal. The female children were raised to populate as Marcus wanted them to. They weren't in school. Marcus homeschooled them. He was their instructor. He also taught them his religion. And his religion was unorthodox, to say the least. See, y'all about to laugh. Marcus believed in the Bible, but he believed in his teachings just as much. So much so that he started writing his own Bible and teaching from that. But the problem was, oh Lord, this part, oh, y'all about to crack up. The problem was his version of the Bible included vampires. Yes, mobbers, y'all heard me right. I promise y'all, this story just keeps getting weirder. This man compared Jesus Christ to a vampire. He's he said that because Jesus Christ was immortal and had eternal life, that he was like a vampire. Mind you, vampires are literally forces of evil who bite you and make you theirs for all of eternity, much like Marcus was trying to do with his children. But on top of that, they can only come out at night and they look crazy as hell. Don't let this True Bloods and Vampire in Brooklyn fool you. Them vampires look crazy as hell, okay? All of this, which is the exact opposite of what Jesus Christ actually is. This man is stupid as hell. Okay, so needless to say, Marcus was a monster. He would do things like dig graves and tell his kids that the graves were for them if they made the wrong move. He would beat them senseless for asking to roll down a car window or for a little bit of extra to eat. They thought this was the normal. Like Marcus had these kids twisted. He had them believing that it was better to die and go to the Lord together than to be separated by child protective services. What? Okay. Now, Marcus had his children trained like a cult. They ran their household, if you want to call it that, like a cult. He would tell them all the time, it's better to die together than to have child protective services get involved. He was teaching them that if something ever happened, that the best thing to do was murder suicide. One appointed person was to get rid of all of the kids and then kill themselves after. And they would do what he said when he said. They ate what he said to eat and would only speak when spoken to. The women looked down at the ground and dressed modest so that they didn't bring attention to themselves. The boys worked and did their father's tasks. But most importantly, they praised Marcus. He was God. He was their savior. He even had a name. Okay, listen, I'm going to tell y'all this now because this had me cracking the hell up. Okay? He had a name. He had a vampire name. He combined the names Jesus, Marcus, and vampire. And he called himself Javam Marxus Pyre. Javam Marxus Pyre. What in the hooked on phonics hood booger shit is this? As crazy as it is, though, Marcus tried to, have fun with his family in his own little weird way. They would load up on the old school bus that he had purchased to carry them around in, and they would go and work and, run whatever errands he needed ran. And then when they would get home, they would have concerts and plays and talent shows and even ugly contests. Now, for the ugly contest, everyone would wear the ugliest clothes that they could find, and he would judge who was the ugliest. Like, that was the closest thing to normalcy that I could find when it came to this case because everything else was just straight up bull. Okay. The only TV that they were allowed to watch was David Koresh. Now, if y'all don't know who David Koresh is, he was a cult leader, much like Marcus, and he was a pastor that was associated with the siege at Waco, Texas in 1983. And he made his family his own cult. He felt like he was Jesus Christ and that the officers were Satan. So when they were watching coverage of David, Marcus told them, "This is how the world is attacking God's people. This man is just like me. He's making children for the Lord. That's what we should be doing, making children for the Lord." And at one point, Marcus tried to do something a little different. And I guess he decided that he was going to make himself famous like Koresh because he wrote a book called In the Night of the Lights for the Dark. And it was like his own autobiography. But the New York Publishing Company was like, "What the fuck is this?" And quickly rejected it. And like I said, the kids were treated insane. Like the girls were taught to be seen and not heard. And if you saw the promo that I posted, the little video, then you saw how he had like them thick ass matted dreadlocks. So apparently, the girl's responsibility was to wash his nappy ass dreadlocks and keep him clean and scratch his armpits as needed, which was crazy to me because sometimes, more often than not, they lived in places that didn't have running water, and it just looked like he had critters and bugs living in his hair. Like these girls were taught that they would be his future wives and mother to his children. Now, this is another part where you may want to skip ahead if, it bothers you to hear stuff like this. So I would say skip ahead about 10 seconds or so. But at just 8 and 9 years old, these girls are being taught to perform oral sex on this man. Like oof, you teaching my babies, like small children, baby girls, to give you head. Like these girls had to be isolated because to think that this Negro was the pick of the litter, like, ugh, he looks like you could smell him before you see him. Like, ain't no way I would want that anywhere near me. It makes me nauseous just thinking about it. And when people would see these young girls pregnant and, question him on what was going on or how they got pregnant, Marcus is telling the outside world that all of these girls were getting artificially inseminated. Like he would tell the girls, if anybody asks you how you got pregnant, you tell them that you were inseminated. Um, you were inseminated, but you had no running water. You were inseminated, but lived in a tent. You were inseminated, but you lived on a bus. You were scrounging in a dumpster for food, but you were inseminated. First of all, who the fuck is going to go to a sperm bank at such a young age to be artificially inseminated? Like, it really, really makes me question people's intelligence that actually believe this story and whatnot, that they could just sit there and say, hey, you know what? That sounds legit to me. Like, come on. Okay. So now you all have an understanding of what type of man Marcus is, right? Controlling, manipulative, a deviant, a rapist, the list goes on and on. Now let's get into what happened. So around September of 2003, Marcus uses the money that he's been getting from his children's jobs and decides to buy a commercial property that had been for sale at 761 West Hammond in Fresno, California. Now it sold for about $100,000, and he was able to put money down and put the building in his wife's name. Now, he wasn't buying it to start a business, however. This was the perfect space for him and his family to live. But here's the thing though, when you're living in a commercial property, eventually the city will find out. Now, if you get the right kind of permits, that's no problem. But if you don't, then you're going to have to start, having city fines and everything, and people going to start coming after you and all of that. So around the time that he purchased the property, Safina Solorio and Ruby Sanchez, who were two of his nieces, They each had children with Marcus. Safina had a son by the name of Jonathan St. Charles Wesson, and Ruby had her daughter, Avive Dominique Wesson. Side note, okay, wait a minute, y'all. Do y'all know Marcus gave the kids vampire names as well? Yes. So Jiva was a combination of Jesus and vampire. That's how she got her name. Sophina was named Vampiress Tala, and Sidonia and Marche were vampire names that he made up in his little self-written Bible. Like this Negro thought he was M. Night Shyamalan or some shit. I don't know. Oh my gosh. Okay, anyway. So Ruby and Savina had left the families because they, felt like they needed to get away. But they left their kids behind. And for several months at that, like I'm just like, I get that you want to go, but take your kids with you. You leave your kids in the place that you're trying to get away from. You ain't think they were affected by that? So the city had started to send fines to Marcus after they found out that he was using the commercial space as a home. Now, one thing about this home is there's no heat. So Marcus would have the kids use the coffins that he had bought them to keep themselves warm. Now, I told y'all that this was a crazy story. I told y'all he was taking this vampire stuff to the extreme. Okay. Yes, these babies slept in freaking coffins. Like, what kind of craziness? And he's getting these fines from the city, and he's thinking to himself, maybe it's better I take everybody to Washington to be closer to my mama. He ain't have to worry about his father anymore because his father had died like literally right after everything happened. And so, he was like, all right, well, maybe we'll just go up to Washington. Everything will be great. So he tells his family, we're going to move to Washington soon to be with my mama. And when Safina and Ruby get word of this, they know that they got to get their babies up out of there. And, since they had left, they had been trying to see their kids, but Marcus is making it impossible for that to happen. And it's like a punishment for him. So, like I said, one day Marcus comes to the family and he's like, listen, we're going to move to Washington. That way we can be closer to my mama. And it's not like the children or the women really had anything to say about it because they did whatever he told them to do. But B was at her breaking point. She knew it would only be worse when they left. After Marcus had made the announcement, B was standing there just numb and she just like remembers she couldn't really have a relationship with her children. And, the daughters aren't allowed to speak to her, nor the sons for that matter. So B, she comes in the room and she sees that Marcus is sitting with their 17-year-old daughter, Elizabeth Jr., who he called Lise. And he had instructed Lise to come sit next to him. And he's, kind of just sitting there chilling with his arm around her. And B is just looking at her daughter, and she can see Lise has this expression on her face like she just knows that something bad is going to happen. Like, and out of nowhere, something comes over B and she just takes off running. She's running and she's running. Homegirl ran all the way out the house, not knowing that she would never see her children alive again. Now, Marcus knew that the city was coming for him and his family sooner than later. And later happened to be March 12th, 2004. So it just so happens that the cops came out that morning with the city to let Marcus know, hey, you can't keep living here with all these people in this commercial property. We told you that if you were going to do that, you had to have special permits. You're going to get evicted. And Marcus takes the papers that the city gives him and he goes back inside. And he knows for sure that he definitely has to get up out of there now. But a few hours later, Safina and Ruby go to the police because they're fed up. They want their kids out that house. They're no longer under Marcus's spell. They want to break free. And so, low key, so does B. So the police decide to escort Ruby and Safina back to the compound so that they can get to their kids. It's March 12th, 2004, around 2 p.m., and Ruby and Safina show up at the door with police because, they think that the presence of the cops will help. But Marcus is prepared for this. Ruby and Safina, they're standing at the door with the cops, pleading with this man to let them get their kids. And Marcus is calm the entire time. But, they're going back and forth on who actually has custody. And it's not like there's much information because this man keeps the family off the grid. And you've got Sabrina and Lise, they're standing behind Marcus and they're screaming, "You Judas, you Judas." All the while, Ruby and Safina are screaming that they want their kids. And the cops are talking to Marcus and Ruby and Safina, and Ruby and Safina just bust in the door. And Marcus tells them, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna let you see them if you agree to leave after you see them." But Ruby and Safino had plans to take them because they already knew that Marcus was about to take that bus all the way to Washington and they would never see their kids again. So he tells the officers, "Give me a minute." And he closes the door and steps away. And this is where I start to think,
No, you done fucked up, right? No. You know you done fucked up, right?
they should have never let that man close the door. There was already too much that had happened at that address, and closing the door just leaves too much opportunity for wrongdoing. And that's exactly what happened. Everything that you could think of going wrong did. So Ruby and Safina are in the house and they're trying to get to their kids. Safina was able to actually grab Jonathan, which was her son, but then Lise comes and snatches him away from her. Meanwhile, Marcus goes and whispers something in Sabrina's ear. And Sabrina was the new wife. She was old enough, like I think she was either 24 or 25 at the time. She was old enough to move out like some of the children had when they became of age, but she chose not to and she chose to do Marcus's work. So he whispers in her ear and she nods. And he leaves the room. And Sabrina starts getting all the kids, luring them into one of the rooms. She gets Lise to help, and together they gather 8-year-old Illabelle Carey Wesson, 7-year-old Aviv Dominique Wesson, 7-year-old Jonathan St. Charles Wesson, 4-year-old Ethan St. Laurent Wesson, Sabrina's own 1-year-old Marche St. Christopher Wesson, 1-year-old Jiva Saint Vladden Spry Wesson. I'm telling you, I can't make this up. And 1-year-old Sadonna Vadra Wesson. And they go into the room. Sabrina looks in a brown bag and she pulls out a 22 caliber handgun and goes down the line, giving one single shot through the right eye to each of them. She then turns the gun on herself, putting a bullet through her head, just completely, finishing the whole murder suicide pact that Marcus had instructed. Now, this is all according to Marcus, okay? This is his account of what happened. So once this is done, Marcus takes each of the bodies and he stacks them like wood kindling, one on top of the other, and then goes to the front door. And he opens it and he faces the police. And they look at him and they see that he is covered in blood. His hands, his clothes, everything is drenched. And the cops are trying to figure out what the hell happened because they didn't hear any gunshots. They're trying to figure out why this man is bloody. So, Ruby and Safina are outside right at this point, and they're begging for their children to be released and saying, it wasn't supposed to be like this. And all I'm thinking is, why did you leave your children there in the first place? But be that as it may, when they see him come to the door bloody like that, everything goes quiet. Both Ruby and Safino's children and Jonathan and Aviv, they're both dead. So the women are trying to get inside because, now they're frantic. They know that their babies have been shot or that they know that some babies have been shot because there's still children that survived in that house. So they're trying to get inside so that they can see, but it's a mess. And so the cops go into the house to begin their investigation. And some of the cops are literally sick to their stomach with what they're seeing. Like these babies are stacked one on top of each other, like stacked wood, mangled together, blood dripping from their bodies. Some of them are just in t-shirts or just diapers, just lifeless. There are a few children that are still in the house that didn't go into the room with Sabrina, and they're alive, traumatized, but alive. B had been arrested, but the prosecution knew they needed her. They wanted her to testify against Marcus on the things that she had seen and endured in the house and with, things that she had done with Marcus. So they actually offered her immunity in exchange for her testimony. And then Marcus, of course, he's put in hand.
Taco Bell's new jalapeno citrus salsa adds a tangy twist to the Cantina chicken menu. A sweet and spicy, bright, citrusy burst of flavor made with real red jalapenos and guajillo chilies. Try it with a rolled quesadilla, and you will absolutely be, well, I don't want to give it away. You need to try it for yourself. New jalapeno citrus salsa, the sauce with main character energy. Get it with anything on the Cantina chicken menu for a limited time, only at Taco Bell. At participating locations while supplies last.
Athletic Brewing Company crafts award-winning non-alcoholic beers for those who want to be part of every round. With over 185 flavor awards, they're exceptional NA beers that fit your lifestyle and any social occasion. Summer's full of good times, and Athletic fits right in. Go to athleticbrewing.com to have brews delivered to your door, or find them at a bar, restaurant, or store near you. Near beer. Athletic Brewing Company. Fit for all times.
Cuffs and gets taken to the precinct where he's charged with the murders. So Marcus's bail was set at $9 million. So there was no way he was making that. Now, one thing that bothered me about this case is how the neighbors handled it. There's always a neighbor that saw something that just didn't want to say anything. And I feel like in this case, that's what it was when it came to their neighbor, Christina Morales. Even though she was, only 22 years old, she saw a lot, like a whole lot. She would see the women dressed in their black dresses working on the bus with Marcus. She would see him pull the girls by their hair if they walked off or did something that he didn't like. And I'm just like, so it never dawned on you to call the cops, huh? Hmm. Okay. So Marcus is getting ready for trial. And what really got me is that he kept trying to get the trial delayed, telling the judge that he wanted to hire his own attorney. But it's like, what you gonna hire him with? Like, you can't afford an attorney, brokey. So he ended up getting two public defenders, Peter Jones and Ralph Torres. And I mean, I guess they tried. Like, I feel like this was just one of those cases that they knew they were going to lose. And their biggest defense is to say that the prosecution couldn't prove that Marcus shot and killed all of those kids. And it was somewhat of a strong argument because there's no gunshot residue on Marcus, although he did, come back to the door bloody as hell. The defense is saying that Sabrina, the eldest child, is the one that did everything, including, killing her own son and then committing suicide, especially since they found a 22 caliber handgun underneath her body. Her DNA was the one that was found on the gun and not Marcus's. But the prosecution is like, we don't give a damn who pulled the trigger. This was all on Marcus. If Sabrina did kill them kids, Marcus is still responsible because he's trained these kids to believe that they have to commit the murder-suicide pact to keep him out of trouble. He had them thinking it was better to die than for CPS to get involved. The jury selection for the trial was insane because when they were going through the process of selecting jurors, so many people were terrified just to be in the room with this man. Like, they had never met him before, and yet his presence was just so powerful where people were scared and saying that they didn't want to be in the room with him. So the trial goes underway March 3rd, 2005. And all in all, it took the trial almost 3 months to be done. Like, the trial went from March of 2005 all the way to freaking June of 2005. And the trial is overseen by Superior Court Judge R.L. Putnam. Marcus is up against the prosecutor, which was the Chief Deputy District Attorney, Lisa Gamoian. And one of the things that really stood out was that the prosecutor said to the jury in opening statements, she said, he controlled their bodies, their hopes and dreams. He controlled their deaths. He controlled the timing of it. He controlled the manner of it. Like, imagine the terror in that bedroom. And she was referring to, how the kids died, of course. And then Peter, which was Marcus's defense attorney, he's trying to make it seem like Marcus is the victim. He's telling the jury, Mr. Wesson is the kind of product of a certified conflicted family that facilitated between religious and advice. His mother, although religious, spent so many hours of the day lecturing about the second coming and filling her children's head with these ideas. And then their father was an abusive alcoholic that couldn't keep steady income. Well, in this case, I guess it's like father, like son, because Marcus was fucking off with family too. Only he was messing with his own kids. And his attorney is harping on this whole, Marcus's father propositioned his own son's friends for sex and how Marcus had to live several years with a disgustingly nasty father. And he grew up, stuttering and bringing home stray dogs and cats that he nursed back to health. And I'm thinking, what the hell does that have to do with what he did to them children? What the hell does him liking cats and dogs got to do with him being a murderer? Because it seems like he took better care of animals than he did his own kids. Peter actually thought it would be a good idea for Marcus's parents to come to the courtroom as far as, to support and to kind of, support the claims of how bad his childhood was. But Marcus's daddy was just not wanting to. And his mom was too sick to really do anything till she could barely move. And so, actually, no, at this point, his father died 3 weeks after he was initially arrested. His father died April 1st of 2004. His trial was in March of 2005. So at this point, it's literally just his mama, and her health is declining severely. And so, there was no way that she was going to be able to travel from Washington all the way to basically Fresno, California. That's not going to happen. So the prosecution is ready, and they call several different witnesses from B to the surviving children and the nieces. So remember, I told y'all that they offered B immunity in exchange for her testimony. So the prosecution basically set the precedence that, Marcus was controlling in every single way. And it was so sad because when I was watching one of those videos, some of the jurors were crying. But when B gets on the stand, she said some shit that rocked me to the core. She said, according to the newspaper, my whole family, my way of life is not normal. Like, that's crazy to me because that means that that man had such a hold on them that he had to like you had no touch with reality, none whatsoever. They were cut off from the outside world. She had to read a newspaper to get an idea of what normalcy was. But don't get it twisted though. B wasn't all that way innocent. She had her moments on the stand too. Like, for example, when the prosecution gets on her, they straight up asked her, they were like, why didn't you protect your daughters from the sexual abuse? And she answers, well, I didn't know. How can I protect them if they didn't tell me? They never told me anything. And that was because of the fact that he did not allow the children to speak to her. But girl, you knew exactly what the fuck was going on. My question would have been, how is it that you can birth so many children by this man knowing that he raped you and not think he was doing the same to them kids? Telling me that you can't talk to the children that you birthed. If I carried you in my body for 9 months, I'm a damn sure have a conversation with you, fam. So the prosecution then asks her, what did you see him doing to your daughter, Elizabeth? And she answers, well, I saw him leaning over by her bed, but I didn't see anything. I can only see her eyes. And then the district attorney got that ass. So she says, I want to understand why you left your children with the monster. Baby, I guess hearing that was like the final straw because B got so mad that she yells out in the courtroom, why are you such a bitch? Like, it was almost like these bitches were still fighting over this man or something. Why, I don't know, because he looked like he smelled like cabbage water and earring backs. But what made it so funny is that the entire time, Marcus had been quiet up until that point. When B yelled that out and was like, why are you such a bitch? This man stood up and said, objection, Your Honor, the prosecutor is angry. Baby, I am weak. I have never laughed so hard in my life when I saw that. And baby, when I tell you that judge shut him up so fast, he was like, look him. You may have thought that you had control over in your household, but you damn sure don't have no control over here. So you can shut that up. One of the daughters, Kiani, she kept a journal that was used as evidence. And there were a lot of things that she talked about, like how all they had to eat at times was rice. In another one of her entries, she said something along the lines of, I hope we make it today. I can't go on any longer. And Kiani ended up getting on the stand. And when the prosecution brings up one of her journal entries, that insinuates the whole, murder suicide thing, there was a line that said, "We live for Christ, we die for Christ." She takes a look at Marcus, and it's like she just kind of withdraws and switches it up, and she says, "We live for Christ, we die for Christ" is just a figure of speech. Like, she's still pledging allegiance to this man. Like, he got her that shook on the stand, not even saying anything to her. I'm telling you, there were so many people there that were clapping for him. Some people were crying. Some people was upset. Like, this was truly a house divided. So then Sidonia gets on the stand and talks about how Marcus beat her 1-month-old son until his legs bled because he wouldn't stop crying. Like, he's a month old. What the fuck do you think he's supposed to do? He's not in control of his emotions. He's a 1-month old. So you beat him on his legs until he stops crying? If anything, that's going to make him cry more. But that's just me. So Rosemary, aka Rosa, she gets on the stand and shows the jury a scar that was on her chest. And the prosecution asked her, how that came about. And she tells the jury that Marcus stabbed her in the chest when she talked about leaving the family. Not when she tried to leave, when she talked about it. Like, damn. That's damn. So, after all of the testimony and the evidence is presented, the jury is dismissed to deliberate, and they're going for about 9 hours. So, they had a little bit of time that, they took to come to their decision. But honestly, I think it was just more so them trying to argue what the man was actually guilty of. Like, they knew he was guilty, but they had to figure out how they were going to make him suffer. I mean, clearly he had spent years manipulating and abusing these kids through incest and religious teachings that were out of this world, and basically, like I said, had, gotten them trained to believe that if law enforcement ever got involved, the only way that they could really be free was to take their own lives. And so after about 9 hours, the jury is done with their deliberations and they come back in the courtroom. And I was watching some of the trial on YouTube, and it was like a weird mixture of reactions and emotions. Like, some of the jury was literally, like, smiling and waving when they came in, and some of them just looked like they were spent, like, they just looked like they were defeated and life was over. They were ready to go. And what was really weird was that Marcus was just sitting at the table with his attorneys pretending to play the piano. Like, not that you trying to act like you crazy now. Ain't nobody buying that. So ultimately, the jury decided that even though Marcus was not the one that actually pulled the trigger, he was the one that was responsible. And on June 17th, 2005, they find Marcus DeLon Wesson, the vampire king of Fresno, guilty of 9 counts of first-degree murder and guilty on 14 counts of affordable rape and the sexual molestation of 7 of his daughters and nieces. His family is in the courtroom and they're bawling their eyes out, boo-hooing. Some of them kinda look like they actually had a look of relief, while the others are looking distraught as if, they lost the love of their life or something. And the whole time, Marcus is just sitting there stoic. He don't say a word. Like, he's literally looking 2 steps from homeless, which, hell, he pretty much was throughout most of this episode. But he's just sitting there. And I'm just thinking, like, you literally had these kids in a pile, mangled up like trash. You killed 9 of your 15 kids. You have absolutely no emotion. When it came time for them to consider what the sentencing was going to be, this is where it gets even more interesting. I'll say this. I get that as a public defender, you kind of have to, take what you get. But when it comes to this case, I would have much rather just been like, you know what? Hey, I'm good. I'm taking some vacation days because this case was just wild. But they tried to do what they could for Marcus. The defense attorney, Peter Jones, he says, "I'm so disappointed in what the jury decided. I don't think he was actually I don't think he was actually disappointed, honestly. I think he knew what was going to happen. Incest, rape, murder. Come on, man." Instead, he says, "Well, what more could I have done? What else could I have said? You always second guess yourself in a case like this." And he really tried, I guess, to make things easier for Marcus. And so he asked the judge, he was like, I asked that you don't kill him, spare his life because he didn't actually shoot the weapon. Sabrina did. And there was no gunshot residence on his hand, it was on hers. And it's good if he continues to, I think their thing was trying to get him to stay alive for the sake of his kids. But at the end of the day, the judge takes the request into consideration, and 10 days later, on June 17th, or excuse me, June 27th, 2005, Marcus Delon Wesson gets sentenced to what? Death. Hmm. And he is currently at the San Quentin Rehabilitation Center in San Quentin, California. Even after Marcus was found guilty and sentenced, it took forever for these women to be, I guess you could say, deprogrammed, so to speak, because they were still supporting him. They still felt like he was their salvation and he was their savior. But as time went on, of course, and they distanced themselves more, they started to realize, hey, he no longer has power over us. And they started to realize that what they were going through and how his sons, realized that the things that they endured weren't justified. Like being beaten because you had an extra spoonful of peanut butter or because you asked a simple question. One of Marcus's kids, one of his older sons, Adrian, he talked about what it was like growing up with him. And Adrian had, since moved on and lives in San Francisco after he became of age, but he was very honest. He was like, he was all I knew. He was my dad. He was God. I was really afraid of him. There were times as a child when I could not speak, when I would defecate my pants, when I could not walk for a week because the beatings were so bad. And his other son, Serafino Wesson, who was still living in Fresno and worked as a security guard, he said, without knowing it, we had an invisible gun to our heads. I was brainwashed. If I had ever talked up to him or tried to stop anybody or anything that he did, I wouldn't be alive today. A Fresno reporter by the name of Alicia Sofios actually sat with the family members that arrived, or excuse me, that survived. I am tongue tied tonight. So she sat down with the surviving members and she wrote a book called Where Hope Begins, and it covers the physical and the mental and the sexual abuse that they suffered through Marcus. And I read the book, and let me tell you, it was good, baby. Okay. There were quite a few different books out there about Marcus and the massacre, but this one was the best ones I've read. I think maybe it was because it included, firsthand accounts from his children and not just the secondhand knowledge that you would get, from basic research. And I mean, it was a really good read though. But imagine like being in a house where the boys aren't allowed to talk to their sisters or the girls aren't allowed to talk to their mother, and they're all taught that the only place that they're safe is inside the home where they're being beaten, and not just regular beatings, but beatings with tree branches or cable cords that have been yanked out of the wall. Like, damn. Now, despite Marcus being sentenced to death, Governor Newsom issued an executive order halting executions and closing the execution chamber in 2019. So homeboy is still kicking. Okay. Marcus's mother, Carrie, she passed away in 2017. And his children, Kiani, Serafino, Dorian, Ethan, Gypsy, Adrian, and Lise, they're all living their life along with their mother, B. Oof, Jesus. This is more names than a DMX song. I felt like saying all of them names. I just wanted to be like, what these bitches want from a nigga. Like, yikes on bikes. So Serafino saw his father, and, for the first time, he was used to seeing him fearless and powerful. But that day, he was calm and he had this look of helplessness. And Serafino was talking about, in the book, he was talking about the look of total control that he was used to, but how it was a real eye opener. And for the first time, Marcus's son, thought, "You're not at all powerful. You're just evil." When he was involved in the book, he said, "Our father trained us to be soldiers. Now I'm married and have two children of my own. When my son was born, I got down on my knees and made a vow that I would give him the best life anyone could have and be nothing like my father." I'm so glad that he did that, and I'm praying that he never turns out like his father. Like all of them are going to need extensive therapy, okay? Adrian also moved on in his life. He's become a personal trainer and works at Levi Strauss and Company. Marcus's, punk ass is inmate number V88811 at the California healthcare facility with his old ass. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Marcus Delon Wesson, the Vampire King of Fresno. And now it's time for Fair or Foul, where we look at the justice system to determine if the sentencing that was given was indeed fair or if it was just some bullshit that's going to have us sit back saying, what the fuck? So the fact that he got 9 death penalty sentences is perfect. I wish that they would have gotten rid of his ass within the first couple of years, gave him that good old $42 cocktail real quick. Don't give him no extra time. Go ahead and get rid of his ass. I hate that there's a moratorium on the death penalty right now for the state of California because he definitely does not deserve the air that he's breathing. But the fact that, he will never see the light of day again is perfect for me. His execution should have been quick and swift. Like, this man is a poster child for sickos. Like, he's a poster child for pathetic. There's no amount of childhood trauma that can cause or can excuse or justify the actions that you do. There's so many ways and areas where I'm sitting back thinking about how wrong this is. The fact that he literally told a woman that already had 8 children that he was going to marry her daughter at 14 years old. He started grooming B at 8, molesting her at 8 years old. This is sick as shit to me. And I've got a lot to say to the mama too, because I'm like, what in the fuck would possess you to let your boyfriend who you just had a child with take advantage of your daughter? What kind of fuck shit were you on that you said that this was okay? The minute that he said that shit, you should have put a bullet right in between his eyes or gone to the cops and pressed charges. Something. Instead, you said, baby, sure, you can have my daughter. You deserve to be in prison right along with him because you gave this girl to your boyfriend. You gave her to your baby daddy or whatever the fuck you want to call it. That is sick as hell to me. There's no excuse. Were you that fucking desperate for a man? And yes, I can understand Stockholm syndrome and all of that. Yes, I understand that, some women are traumatized and they feel like they need a man and everything. And I'm like, yo, you do got 9 kids now. I get it. So she probably felt like she needed somebody in the household, but this nigga was a bum, like a bona fide bum that did absolutely nothing. He brought nothing to the table except dick. He brought nothing to the table except pedophilia. He brought nothing to the table at all. And the fact that you just willingly said, hey, yes, I'm going to let you marry my 14-year-old daughter. What the fuck is wrong with you? I got a problem with that. Like I said, your ass needs to be in jail right along with him. This man was nothing more than a waste of God's breath, a waste of dirty ass skin. This man was nothing more than a waste of God's creation. You came onto this earth and literally did nothing with your life. You had your children living in tents, living on a bus. You treated them like slaves. What in what religion to you does it say treat women like slaves and have them rowing you back and forth to shore in a tugboat, motherfucker? You had them living in unhealthy conditions. You treated them like they were your personal servants. Newsflash, fuckface, you are not God. Have you ever heard of the word blasphemy? Because if you really are about religion, you should know that what you are doing is classified as blasphemy. You are being a false prophet or pretending to be a false god. Like, I just don't understand the reasoning behind any of this. Like, what is the reason, huh?
What's the reason?
Like, damn, were you not loved as a child? Were you picked on? Like, come on, something. Give me something here. Because you had these women and your kids terrified of you. Let's take out the incest aspect for a second. Like, let's just focus on how you treated these children. Now, there's a difference between a child respecting you and doing as you say, and a child fearing you and doing as you say for fear that they could be harmed. Every last one of your kids did things because they were scared and that they could be hurt. But you digging graves and threatening them, beating them with cords and sticks and belts, that is not how a parent should be raising their child. But that's how you were raising them. The fact that you had them going out there working and making money for you, you were nothing more than a glorified pimp. And I really hope that your big ass is in prison getting your big ass stretched out. Actually, you're at the rehab facility now because your old ass is sick and probably dying being in there. So hopefully you're cuffed to a bed and got bed sores and your funky ass is pissing on yourself and funky as shit. I hope they let you truly rot in that bitch, you dirty, nasty, boiled bologna smelling ass motherfucker. You used your size to intimidate little girls, and I hope that they castrate you. I really hope that they cut your fucking dick off and kick that shit around like a fucking football. I hope that you got to suck the biggest dick in prison right now. The fact that you did this enrages me. It infuriates me. You cut your family off from the outside world. You knew that they needed you. You knew that you were nothing, that they did everything for you. You needed them so you controlled them because you knew that that was the only way that you would be respected was by fear. I can't stand to see parents use fear tactics to get their kids to do right. I can't stand to see parents use abuse to because their kids did something minor. I'm sorry, y'all. Whew, let me calm down. Y'all know how I am when it comes to kids. I hate to see kids abused. And I told y'all, I gave y'all the warning that this episode, I was going to pop my ish, and I have been. Okay. So I gave y'all that warning. But when it comes to this is bum behavior. The woman that wrote the book with them, Alicia Sofio, I commend her because she helped these people acclimate themselves into society. She helped them get themselves together. She helped them see a life outside of what they've known. And that is big because she didn't know these people. And now they're living somewhat normal lives. They still have to deal with trauma. They still have to deal with the nightmares that will never leave them. They're going to remember that day for the rest of their lives. What happened was horrific. Nobody knows if Sabrina was the one that shot and killed everybody and then herself, or if Marcus did it. Now, logically and logistically, they're saying that there's no gunshot residue on him and it was on Sabrina. So, of course, they're looking at her. But what I'm focused on is that these children were taught that the only way out was to kill themselves. The only way out was to murder everybody and then take themselves out to please him. They they literally wanted to do what this man said up until their dying breath. Like you shot and killed babies, 1 year olds that did not know any better. They didn't know. They didn't get a chance to live. They didn't get a chance to live their life and be children. You kept these children from their mother. And I partially feel some type of way towards B because at the end of the day, you've been around for years. But at the same time, like I said, I commend her too because she did try to stand up for herself. And unfortunately, she was getting, choked out for standing up for herself. And I'm glad that these babies are now getting to live somewhat of a normal life. Like, I hate that this happened, that this is one of the most gruesome cases I have ever covered. Like, you were teaching these babies at 8 years old to perform oral sex on you, you nasty ass. You were fucking 8-year-old little girls, you sick, sadistic bitch. You are 300 and 400 pounds and you're on them like that. Like, what is wrong with you? Seriously. Like, all I'm thinking is cutting your dick down the middle and pouring acid on that bitch so that you can never use it again, or taking bleach and pouring it down your throat so that you can never fucking talk again and spread your fake ass gospel, chopping off them fucking dirty ass dreadlocks off your head because you thinking that you fucking Samson in this bitch. Oh, your mama should have swallowed you. This shit is infuriating me, y'all. Like, my blood is boiling. You created children with your children. Does that seem okay to you? You were creating inbred and incest, and ain't no telling what was wrong with them kids. None of them received proper medical care. Then you telling people to lie and say that it's artificial insemination like you could really afford that when you couldn't even afford running water? And then my question is, where the hell was CPS? Because if people are seeing this and they see that these women, or rather these girls, are out here creating babies and everything, they know that that wasn't no artificial insemination. They know that you full of shit. Even if they believe that, Even if by small chance one of them neighbors was like, oh, yeah, he's really getting artificial insemination done on these kids, it's still some shit that's gonna make you side eye. That's still some shit that's gonna make you say, okay, hey, even if it is artificial insemination, they too young for this. Something needs to be done. I can only pray that these babies continue to live their lives and have some normalcy. I pray for them that they can get through the trauma that they've experienced. I pray that they get the help that they need because this is some serious psychological bullshit. That is all for this week's episode of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast. You can follow the show on the various streams on Instagram and TikTok at Infamous One Podcast. That's a number one, by the way, not spelled out, and you can leave a review there. On Twitter, it's Infamous One Pod, where you can also leave a review. On Facebook, you can join the private discussion group, the Infamous Ones discussion group, but please be advised, if you don't answer the questions, you ain't getting in. I say this week after week. Y'all should be used to it by now, so it's that simple. Make sure you share the group with a friend and share it with a friend of a friend of a friend. And then once you get in, chop it on up, because we talk about the real in there. So come on in, take a seat, tell us what you're sipping on and where you're from. Plus, I like to talk smack in there and, we the mob, so it's serious. The show streams on multiple streaming services like Odyssey, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify, of course. So please, please, please listen on Spotify. Leave a review. It only takes a few seconds, and the reviews matter. And speaking of reviews, let's get into a couple of them. The first one comes from Spotify from Jeannie Sally, and it's on the Digging Up Skeletons episode, which was on Quinetta Harris, the girl that buried Michael Giles in the backyard after she killed him. The review is 5 stars and it says, "This is a true sociopath. I see she's on a hobo tour talking about being abused in prison. She's a manipulative, nasty piece of work. Wouldn't surprise me if she set the guards up. Rest in peace to Michael. He did not deserve to be snuffed out by this greedy witch like that." You know what? I never thought about her setting the guards up, but you know what? You might be onto something. I got to look back into that. I got to go look back at that case because I'm like, okay, you might be onto something there. She could have set that up. I never thought about that. But thank you for the review, honey bunny. I appreciate it. The next review comes from Apple Podcasts from Always on Their Mind, and it's a 5-star review captioned "Good Storytelling." It says, "Kay is a great storyteller. She's passionate about the story she tells. She empathizes with the victims in the crime. I also like how she goes heavy on the perpetrator at the end. Keep up the great storytelling." Why, thank you, boo. I definitely appreciate the love, and yes, I do be going in a little bit too much, kind of like I did tonight. So yeah, my bad. But yeah, I will say that this episode was hard because I had to stick to the facts and try not to, go in too hard because the episode would be nowhere near done if I did that. But again, thank you so much, and please keep showing your girl some love. All right, y'all. Announcement time. Don't forget, this Saturday, January 17th, 2026, we will be doing the live show at Mint Hill Studios in Mint Hill, North Carolina, which is, of course, Charlotte. The registration is over, so if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, I'm so sorry. But those that did register, if you have not purchased your drink package yet, they are still available for purchase. They will be available up until 30 minutes before the doors open. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. So that means that the drink packages are on sale until 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Drink packages are $20 plus tax, so $21.99, and it'll get you a wristband with 4 drinks. We will have tipsy sips on deck with the featured drink, the Murderous Mimosa. Ow. I can't wait to see y'all and have a really good case. And yes, this case is going to be insane. So make sure that you show up and show out. Also, the address for the venue, it is on your ticket, but in case you ain't paying attention, 11205 Lawyers Road in Mint Hill, North Carolina. That's 11205 Lawyers Road in Mint Hill, North Carolina. If your name is not on that list, you will be checked at the door. That is how you gain entry. So if your name is not on the list, you cannot be let in. I told you no pop-ups the day of. Sorry, not sorry. The show has been promoted for weeks, so y'all should know that by now. Make sure to follow the infamous ones. It is very important because y'all know I have the black box, and the only way that you will know about episodes for that is if you follow the show. You can follow on any streaming app. I would love it if you listen on Spotify because that's how I monetize. But Yeah. Make sure you follow because the episodes will be dropped at random. You never know. I might drop one or two this week. Who knows? Now, there will be a shorter episode of the infamous ones on Sunday since I'll be traveling that day. I will be recording later than planned. So, just a heads up, there's going to be a shorter episode. Okay. So, prepare yourselves accordingly. The Experience the Exhale 2.0 Summit is coming fall 2026. Experience the Exhale is a faith rooted wellness community for women that are navigating life, love, and identity. If you're in a season of transition, married, separated, divorced, or simply rediscovering yourself as a single woman, this is your safe space to breathe, heal, and gain clarity. Through guided support and a powerful sisterhood, Experience the Exhale helps you release what no longer serves you and step into your next chapter with peace and purpose. Connect with us and locate your rainbow. Sis, it's time to exhale. Follow Experience the Exhale on all social media handles, Instagram and Facebook at Experience the Exhale. You can also check out their website to take the clarity quiz on www.experiencetheexhale.com. If you want to support the show, or if you're feeling the spirit, meaning that liquor we've been sipping on, click the link at the bottom of the screen from whatever app you're listening to this episode on and hit listener support to subscribe. Subscriptions start at just 99 cents, or you can donate via the Cash App to $infamous1pod. That's $INFAMOUSONEPOD. The donations go toward court documentations, interviews, JPay, etc. And of course, shout out to the popcorn donation. If you have a case that you want to hear more on that you feel has been ignored in the Black community, if you want to inquire about ad space, or if you want to leave a review, send an email to infamous1pod@gmail.com. That's INFAMOUSONEPOD@gmail.com. Once again, people, please share, share, share. This podcast is growing by the day and it means the world, so please keep sharing. Until then, y'all know what it is. I'm your girl Kay. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see y'all next week with a new episode starting season 4. Stay mobbing, y'all. Peace.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Infamous Ones, a true crime podcast hosted by Kay. Be sure to like and comment on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe so that you never miss an episode.